What's going on, everyone? Falcone here, live from Helping Our Music Evolve in East Nashville, Tennessee, and welcome to an early edition of Falcone Friday. Today, my guest is Jordan. What's up, brother?
Hey, man. How you doing?
Pretty good.
Good.
What's your track called? I didn't ask you that before.
This one's I'm Stylin'.
I'm Stylin'.
Yeah.
Cool little kind of EDM joint right here. So I'll probably this section kind of dig into it.
Get it when I get it when I get it when I get back. I'm styling. I'm quality. I'm styling. I'm quality. I'm styling. I'm quality. I'm styling. I'm quality. Get back.
Yeah, man. Yeah, so I set out pretty intentional on this one to make something that would work well for an Adidas spot or a Nike spot, anything in that kind of like fashion shoe realm. Definitely wanted something that banged, a little hip-hop inspiration, a little drum and bass inspiration, a little EDM. Yeah, everything is done in Ableton. I tend to start with beats, tend to start with drums, move into bass, and then just kind of go from there.
We also work in Ableton today, mixing this this kind of music. I like to work in Ableton usually. Allows me a little more flexibility in how I kind of route things and process things. So I'm digital, Sony
Yeah,
digital.
relax.
What kind of like gritty? Okay, so I'm a little hot in the mic. All right. How about we're gonna adjust it a little bit. Make sure I'm good. I got my primary sources expander on. Sounding good. How about now? We sound a little better. 37. Oh yeah, we're on that delay.
We're transmitting from space, by the way.
Yeah, we on the moon right now. So sounds good on here, but you never know what it's gonna sound like on the stream. Facebook might just like throttle our bandwidth.
Yeah.
Grouty? Oh, okay. So I bet that's the ATEM. I bet we're overloading that ATEM a little bit, aren't we? So let's look at our ATEM. Yeah, I'm gonna lower him down, or I might just lower the feed down a little bit, driving into that, or we might have to check the. Is that better? I'm cleaning up. Okay, so I just gain staging, y'all. Oh yeah, so that sounds like I'm driving into that too hard. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drive this down a little bit here. And then I'm going to see, I got a little more level there. Yeah, that allows me a little more dynamic, and I'm not going to hit that as hard. Because it's not bricked, it's not stopping. So that's good. All right. I think that's a little better. It should be better now. Way better. Okay, cool. All right, cool. So let's take a look at what's going on. We got some drums, we got some 808, some synths, some vocals. Oh yeah, let's just kind of get into it. I'm gonna mute my microphone and kind of just dive in and kind of get acquainted with everything, and then go from there. Oh, here we go. Let's start with this section right here.
Get back. style. I'm styling. I'm styling. I'm styling. Get back. I'm styling. I'm styling. I'm styling. Styling. I'm styling. I'm styling.
I guess my only question so far was the what was that Maserati you had going?
That's it's on the kick. I've been trying to use that lately. I like what it does in the mid range to the kick drum. So like that's without it. It's kind of with it. I'm not dialed in completely yet,
Sure.
so it's just like trying to find a sound. But I like what this does, like
Snap.
in the snap section.
Nice.
You know, it
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
adds a little like 800 in the mid range. You know, and then it's just that's a little better.
That's sick.
So you adjust the sensitivity knob to like the lights like green.
Yeah.
You know.
And each one of those drum buttons has a different setting.
Yeah, it's just a different preset for those
Dope.
5 knobs. You know,
Nice.
something I've been using a little lately.
It's got that punch.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's that, and then I also like. And this is like different flavors and stuff. Like I might end up muting all this shit, if, later. But I kind of just. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to do this. That ends up being too much. So I don't think I even want to use that. But that's what I do. It's like I just try to figure out what flavors work well together. So I just kind of throw some stuff up there and see if it's gonna do, like, if that kick's gonna react the way I think it react. So I'm just kind of experimenting on that stuff.
This one's a dynamic EQ, right? Nice.
Yeah, totally. It all goes back to I know these speakers so well that I I'm trying to so there's a sharpness that's happening in the snare, right? So I'm trying, and I know that these speakers are they overemphasize that frequency range so you can really hear it, right? So if it's piercing your ears on these speakers, then it's going to be too much on other speakers too, because it's very apparent that it's too much on that. But if you played it on the Atoms, it probably won't be as apparent that it's too bad, because those are like really silky, really smooth kind of speakers, and everything sounds great on those, right? So it's they're not as a critical speaker. You know, they don't show as much. So I'm just trying to find that frequency range that hurts my ears. Sounds like an ice pick. And then I'm going to turn that down so that by turning that frequency range down, I can turn the whole volume of the sound up, making it louder, right? So that's I do that in low end too. I try to cut as much as I possibly can first and then turn everything up before I start adding anything. Because I mean, it's all gain staging. The more volume or the more gain that you can get out of your track, the louder it could be without having to add anything to it. So like once I get everything taking away that I want and I get my levels and my gain structure proper, then I start adding stuff. You know what I mean?
Nice.
Like then I start adding, okay, well then, I mean, I think I was explaining to you this when we were working at my house the other day, like then I start visualizing, okay, well, if the vocal is sitting in the one spot, right, and I want it to go above it, right, I'm going to add a little bit of that 5 to 9K, so it just is going to rise it up over top of that sound, creating the space between the elements. But individually, first, I'm going to take away everything I possibly can that is not helping the signal so that I can, maximize the gain structure. Yeah. Well, now that we have the tool, so that's a dynamic EQ, right? So it's basically like a multi-band dynamics processor. So it's affecting the signal dynamically. So like with an EQ, it's destructive, right? I'm taking it away completely all the time versus a dynamic EQ, it's only going to attenuate the signal when it's a problem, quote unquote, right? Where depending how I set my threshold and my range and my attack and release, it's only going to affect it when it goes over that threshold, right? It's not going to completely take it away. And it's a different effect because it's at that point, it's like I have an attack and release time that I can let a little bit of it go through, like the transient, right? I'm not grabbing it at a 0.5 attack. I'm letting like 8 milliseconds go by, so I get a little bit of the snap, but then it's like catching, more of that sharpness. And I don't know if I showed you, I think it did show you that chart, right? That I have with it's like the tempo and then you can set your attack and release times based off of all that stuff. And that's kind of how this all plays into it. But at this point, I just hear it. I know what the difference between 8 milliseconds, 13 milliseconds, 23 milliseconds sounds like and how it's gonna sound. So.
Nice.
Yeah, now it's just like a little tighter, right? And
Was I not supposed to pierce your ears with an ice pick? Was that
no,
not the...
I mean that's cool too. No, but now this allows us to add in
totally
that frequency later. You know what I mean? Because then once everything's set, it's just I can finesse it better. I just want to quickly as possible get a picture of something that's not going to hurt my ears, and then it's like I can start adding the sauce back into it, you know? So if I take it away first, I can add back in tune, 2.5K later in a different way. Like, and then that's when it gets into tube EQs versus solid state EQs, and, things like that. Because if I add, 2.5K with a tube EQ, that's going to sound way different than doing it with a solid state EQ, right? Solid state EQ is going to be like an SSL. It's going to be sharp. It's going to be piercing. It's going to cut through. But if I do it with a Pultec, it's going to be more of a soft, rounded sound, but it's still going to sound like 2.5K.
Yeah.
Just not going to be as sharp. It's going to be a little more smooth to it. So, yeah. Especially in this genre, like, or in this EDM stuff, it's like, SSL is great, but the sounds are very sharp to begin with. So I try to balance that out with different, like, styles of EQs and compressors, like
kind of that like analog warmth.
Totally, and that's what this NLS channel does, right? So this is basically a console emulation. So instead of I'm adding drive to a signal, right? So and then drive is basically exciting the harmonics, right? And then each one of these things have a different sound to it. This is the EMS console that like Pink Floyd's the Dark Side of the Moon was recorded and mixed on. This is an SSL emulation, and that's a Neve emulation right there. So I like this one because it sounds really, really good, and I use it on pretty much everything first, because just by turning the drive up, I can get what I would add with EQ from drive, right? And that's going to make it sound warmer, bigger, fatter, but like rounder at the same time. It sounds more musical. And then it all comes down to gain structure. So I rather add the gain with something like that than just turning up, the volume on that individual element, right? Or adding what I don't have with a regular EQ. So. I mean, no, well, that goes then back to sound selection, and how you're adding or how you're combining elements. Um, I'm, and like again, it's because I know that my speakers so well. The more you know what you're hearing, the quicker and more informed decision that you'll make. Like it doesn't, like, if it takes, cutting 15 dB to make it sound right, then that's what it takes. You know what I mean? It's just knowing what you're hearing and how that's going to translate the best. So I'm like with low end, I'm always trying to watch the woofer like move a certain way, but this is like a thin kick, so it's not gonna. You can see like the woofers moving, right, a little bit. But if I did, let me go. Let me find the 808 real quick, and then kind of show you the difference. So you see that? So that's 40 hertz, right? Or lower. So I know what 40 hertz looks like right there, right? On the speaker, it's moving a certain way. And like what like these old school cats do, some of them put a little like Sharpie marker on the white cone, and you can literally see the line move in a certain way, because a lower frequency is a slower waveform. So like that's real low. You see how that was like super, super low because the woofer started to move like almost in slow motion, like that right there. So like I know that's so low because it's moving the woofer in such a way, right? So without a sub, I already know what the low end's doing, because if I know my gain structure is right, I know, like, you should always have your volume set, know where your reference point is. Like, so I'm at home at my studio, I know that like where that knob is, like 1 o'clock, between 1 and 2 o'clock, that is 85 dBs of sound pressure, basically. When I put up a meter on in my listening position, that knob's at 85 dB, and that's the typical mixing level that you want to work at, and you can work the longest that way. So then when I reference tracks, my level's always at that point. So I know, like, when I listen to a track, it's like, okay, if I go back, flip between the reference track and then my track at that same volume, and it's not the same, then I got work to do. But if I flip back and forth and they're relatively the same, then I know I'm on the right track. So same thing, like when you watch the speaker move, you want to get it to react the same way that someone else's song would look like that, So I know when my level's at that point, I want the woofer to be moving in a certain way, and I don't have to. It doesn't matter what I'm doing EQ wise or compression wise. I'm just literally trying to get that speaker to look a certain way, and I know that I'm going to be pretty much in the ballpark of where I need to be at that point. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
kind of
man.
how.
That visualizing it is huge.
Yeah,
Taking it out, putting it out in front of you so you can see it.
yeah, completely.
Massive.
Yeah, it's everything for me, and
Wow.
I always mix, like we haven't got there yet, but I'll mix in mono and I'll pull one speaker out, and then I'm looking at the woofer again. But my NS10s are actually this way, right? So I'm actually visualizing on the speaker itself where where that sound lies. So I know low end's gonna be like down in this area. I know my vocal's gonna sit like right here, right in between here, and I know like my low mids are gonna be more in the center of this section here, and then the high ends and the hi hats and stuff go up in this section here, and then that's how I can play stuff with EQ up and down that kind of plane.
Oh. You should make overlays. Make like transparencies that you can hang on your monitors. So you can see
Facts. Okay, product idea.
Boom.
Holla, come on. Yeah, that's a great idea actually. So yeah, that's my approach to it. So yeah, so let's get back to. So let's see. Nope. So now I'm gonna do some other stuff here. So what I'll do is I'm gonna do a new track. Put up this 808 here. That input from 808.
Get back. Get back. I'm starting. I'm starting.
So this will give me everything that's below 100 and above 30, just for the sub. And then this will be our top. What I could do with this then, I'm gonna
Got a nice pump to it.
So now I'm going to monitor just through my subwoofer, right? And then I'm going to use a dynamics processor again to control the low end before I ride this limiter here. So the goal is then to level all the sub notes so that they're equal in volume, because sometimes one will sound more excited than the other. So I want to get all those to be as flat as possible first. And I'm going to limit it, and then I'm going to turn it all down so that basically this like sausage tube that lives underneath everything, so the low end will always kind of be there. Well, yes and no. It's all dependent on the so the question was, it does take more than limiting to do that. Well, and it depends on like what the key of the song is and the notes that are being played. But I like to control it dynamically first with like something like this or multi-band compressor or something like that, and then limit that so that the frequency, it's all dynamic depending on what's happening. It's not just like a blanket like limit that's happening, because sometimes then it will push the limiter too hard and then it'll sound funny. So if I can control it first a little bit dynamically, then it doesn't make that limiter work as hard. So yeah, so we can see like, I'm just gonna watch the notes happen. Yeah, so that's cool. And then I know if it's around like 45, then I know if I want to catch 45, that's going to be 25 milliseconds. And then, I don't know if you can hear it. Right, and I might go ahead and just do it like this. Yeah. And now I can like, so I hear that my kick playing too, so we're gonna adjust that in a second. Right? So we can go over here. I'm gonna kind of do the same thing with this guy, and I'm gonna do it around here. I'm gonna find that funny frequency that's happening. Maybe lower this the Q real quick and tweak this a little more. 125-ish. 107. Maybe a little bit of that. Nothing. Something like that, maybe. Make it a little cleaner, and then I'll go ahead and do something like, you know, and then we'll go ahead and group all this forward. I like to do it with the C6. I don't know why, but it just sounds better to me. Not better, it's just, I don't know. I'm used to doing it this way. External. And I'm still just monitoring my subwoofer, right? So now I have my kick playing, and then I'm gonna find where that kick's playing. So I'm gonna go down to 60-ish. And I'm gonna have just that frequency duck when the kick's playing in the 808. So mostly around here, so they don't overlap, and it kind of creates a little room. But I'm doing it frequency dependent, not like with the normal like compressor or something like that. It's just where it needs to happen.
And you said you're doing it so there's no overlap, so there's no separation between the 808 and the kick?
Correct. So the 808 frequency, the kick frequencies don't overpower the 808, you know, and vice versa. So like now if I put this, so now I have to go back and do this though. Now if I go back into the other 808, because we were working on a chain from that 808, right? The original 808. So I'm going to go back here and I'm going to cut everything below 100 hertz on that other 808, the original 808. Right? So that I'll have, I'll just go ahead and mute this. So now that's the top of the 808, right? And I might go ahead and copy this again and do that kind of same thing on that top part of the 808, especially around this 100 or this, and I might move this up here. Yeah. From 117-ish. So there's that, and then there's the 808, there's the sub. So now you can even hear when that low note comes in, we got a more even tone. So if we go back to the beginning, we can listen. So that is where we're gonna have to. You can hear it. It gets a little. Right. So right here, we're gonna have to control that a little bit more. So that's probably 30 hertz. It's rocking, but I just want to control it a little bit more.
Put a leash on it. Tame it a little bit.
Yeah. So see that? That's
Ooh, yeah.
that's. You see now that it's more of an even signal, right? That now I can turn it up. Right? And this is all just like finessing at this point, you know? But that's way better. See, now we're getting somewhere. Cool. So you could see now I just put this crazy EQ on here too, right? How the low end is, I mean, it's pretty good. So, and now I would control the rest of what we're hearing on the master side of it. Let me just check this limiter here. So I probably would want to control this even more. That's how it's getting better and better.
So much smoother.
Yeah. So there you go. To me, that's sounding pretty good. Perfect. So then I would want to, I'll take to, or actually I'm going to then take this and this. Oh, take this and this, right? Okay, so then, can I do this? It won't let me do that. I'm going to, I'll go ahead and put on the master here. Gonna see where we're at EQ wise, or level wise, sorry. And oh, I know what's going on, because I have, yeah, because this is low. That's why I don't got any level. So it's just my shit. Yeah. Okay. And then I can just the top part a little bit. A little bit. So, and for me, I'd probably want another kick that had a little more meat to it. Like this has a lot of 100, but I want like 60, in there. So then I can get that 808 in that kick to really like punch together.
Okay.
So yeah.
I tend to roll off a lot of the lows of my kicks.
Yeah.
Just so that they don't muddy, but it sounds like that's something I should leave for maybe a later stage so you have more control.
Yeah, so like the stages that I'm showing you, like with that dynamic EQ, like instead of like taking it out completely, leave it in there and then control it with dynamic EQ.
Okay.
That when it gets to be too much, and then you side chain whatever that kick frequency is to the 808, right, or on the 808 itself, and then so that when that 60 comes through on the kick, it's just turning 60 down in the 808 just for when the kick's present. And then depending on how you use your attack and release time, you can get it to sound natural, and it'll just sound like one like tube,
Nice.
So. All right. Same thing here. So I like how I'll put it over here. I like how what most of this sounds like, but some's a little loud. So I'll just go ahead and attenuate it.
Don't follow the, follow the. Don't start. Don't start. Don't start. Don't start. Don't start. Don't follow the. Don't start. Don't follow the, follow the. Don't start. Don't follow the. Don't start. Don't follow the, follow the. Don't start. Don't follow the. Don't start. Don't follow the, follow the. Don't start. Don't 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 follow the, follow the.
What are you doing here with this?
Don't start. Don't follow the. Don't start. Don't follow the, follow the. Don't start. Don't follow the. Don't start. Don't follow the, follow the. Don't start. Get back. Don't start. Don't follow the. Don't start. Start. Don't follow the, follow the. Don't start. Don't follow the.
Trying to do is I'm just trying to make this a little more fatter in the low end here, because that's kind of what we're going for. And then when you do the processing on, or that to actually make that effect happen, you usually lose a lot of your signal, and it starts to sound kind of digital. But so I'm trying to add that back.
Don't follow the. Don't start. Don't follow the, follow the. Don't start. Don't follow the. Don't start. Don't follow the, follow the. Get back. Get back. Don't start. Get it when I get it when I get back. Get it when I get it when I get it when I get back. Don't start. Don't follow it. Don't start. Don't follow it, follow it. Don't start. Don't follow it. Don't start. Don't follow it, follow it. Don't start. Get it when I get it when I get back. Get it when I get it when I get it when I get back. Don't start. Don't follow it. Don't start. Don't follow it, follow it. Don't start. Don't follow it. Don't start. Don't follow it, follow it. Don't start. Don't follow it. Don't start. Don't follow it. Don't start. get it when I get back. Get it when I get it when I get it when I get back. I'm starting. I'm falling. 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 I'm falling. I'm starting. I'm falling. I'm starting. I'm falling. I'm starting. I'm starting. Get it when I get back. I'm starting. I'm falling. 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 I'm starting. I'm falling.
That's about an hour. So a little bit about the master here. So this is the last line of defense. And I would do this differently. That's why I started to set up these like pre-masters and all this stuff. And that's where I would do this kind of what I did here. I would send like all the sub information to one thing, and then I would start to apply more multi-band dynamics to these individual groups or like types of instruments, so that I can control them more before I actually hit the main limiter. So then I would be able to control, limit each individual kind of section together, and then aggressively use, a high band section here, so it doesn't, affect the whole thing, and I can kind of tame some of the more higher elements. Again, it's like most of this stuff is controlling that high stuff, so, and the lows, so that you can just turn it up, as much as you possibly can. And yeah, so that's what I did there. And I, on the glue compressor here, I filtered the side chain out, meaning that nothing below 153 hertz is going to get affected by this processor or this compressor here, because I want the sub's already slammed, so I don't want the sub information to affect the sound of the rest of the stuff. So again, like all the rest of the stuff would have been sent to another kind of group thing where this would have been applied to itself. So I got everything else like really nice and tight. And then that kind of combines back with the sub information. And then I just applied, I always put this thing, I just like what this sounds like. This is a linear phase multiband dynamics from waves here. And then you can see at the bottom, there's these kind of values, and these are your peak values. So I just set the thresholds to be the peaks, so it's just kind of kissing the tops a little bit, and it makes it sound kind of balanced, a little louder because I put automatic makeup gain on. When I pull down these faders, you can see how the gain just adjusts itself. But yeah, that's what I like to do with that. And then I had 2 multiband dynamics here by Fab Filter, and one is in linear phase mode, the other is in dynamic phase. When you do low end stuff, dynamic phase is better. Linear phase kind of they call it pre-ringing. There's like something that happens with the latency and the way things process. You get these like kind of ghost note sounds if you use linear phase when you're affecting low end, but when you're doing high end, always use linear phase because it won't affect the phase between the frequencies or the phase correlation. When you're reducing or adding gain, it keeps all the phase natural or in line of how it all usually or originally was. And then the Pro 2L limiter here. So. And you can see we got a pretty healthy level. And I would probably do this even more to get it up louder, but you know we only have an hour, so.
Sure. What's the one of the ranges that people try to get it?
Well, so like
For this type of music?
This type of music's probably, I mean, if you're Skrillex, it's -3, but
Cool. Let's go -2.
yeah, good luck. But usually, I would say anywhere from like -7, -8 RMS is usually like where you're kind of shooting for, to have it still sound good and loud, you know. But I always say it because like look at without the limiter. Man, I always hit that -14 on the dot. So -14 is like the Spotify level. So if you're close to -14, you want this to be integrated. So this is the average level over time. So Spotify, that's where you want to be, is -14, and you want to set this to -1. And then you'll drive this basically. So you get the average level to be -14.
Get it when I get it when I get it.
Let's start over. We'll just show how this works. So to me, it's like I added one. So you'd listen to your whole song and get it to be close. So it seems like I can add a little bit more here. More. Not 30, but hey. Shout out to how transparent that limiter though is, right? At 30 dB.
Get it when I get back.
So yeah, you want to shoot. So your average level is -14. That's what Spotify says it wants. So and then CD is usually like -8, or like most EDM shit, they just make it as loud as you possibly can. But it's just a balance of finding, what sounds good and how that compares to other people's songs. So
Dope.
yeah, all right, cool. Thanks, Jordan.
Appreciate you, man.
Yeah, no doubt. Falcone here from Helping Our Music Evolve in East Nashville, Tennessee. Come down, hang out with us on Fridays. We're doing this every week. So I think we're taking next week off, right? It's Thanksgiving. Everyone have a wonderful, happy Thanksgiving. Make sure you remember what you're grateful for, and tell everyone in your life how much you appreciate them. And have a safe travels if you're flying and making road trips. So cool. See you guys later.
I'm styling. I'm falling.